11. That is the number of Russia's largest gasoline-producing refineries. Ukraine has now struck all 11. The last one fell on July 6, 2026. A refinery in Omsk, Siberia, located 2,700 kilometers from Ukrainian-held territory, close to the border with Kazakhstan, in the deepest strike Ukraine has carried out in this war. Russia's largest refinery, the one plant that had never been touched, processing 22 million metric tons of crude oil per year, 10% of Russia's entire refining capacity. It is burning now. Welcome back. On the night of July 6th, Ukraine did not launch one strike. It launched a coordinated campaign against Russian energy infrastructure across a front stretching nearly 3,000 kilometers from the Baltic Sea to Siberia, executed simultaneously in a single night. Let's go through what actually happened, because the scale of it requires laying out in sequence. Target 1. Omsk, Russia's single largest oil refinery, operated by Gazprom Neft, located deep in western Siberia. Ukraine's general staff confirmed the strike caused a fire at the facility. Preliminary information indicates the ELOU-AVT-11 primary crude oil processing unit was hit, a unit with a design capacity of 8.4 million metric tons per year. Russian Su-57 stealth fighters were deployed over Omsk to intercept the incoming drones. One drone was shot down. All others reached their targets. Target 2. Yaroslavl, the Slavneft Yanos refinery, one of Russia's 5 largest, located 700 kilometers from Ukraine's border and 280 kilometers northeast of Moscow. Explosions and smoke were confirmed at the site. This same refinery was struck just 1 week earlier. It has now been hit multiple times in 2026. Target 3. UST Luga, the Novatek gas condensate complex on Russia's Baltic coast, processing stable gas condensate into naphtha and jet fuel. A Russian missile brigade deployment point in the same region was also struck. Target 4. Kerch and Crimea, 2 tankers in the Sea of Azov carrying 7,000 metric tons of fuel toward the besieged peninsula were struck. One of the largest petroleum storage facilities in the port of Kerch was hit. A military airbase at Vardeyska was targeted. A Pantsir S-2 air defense system was destroyed. One night, 5 separate target categories, nearly 3,000 kilometers of range. Ukraine's general staff put it plainly. Omsk is the last of Russia's 11 largest gasoline producers to be successfully struck by Ukrainian forces. Not one of them has been spared. Now, let's put that inside the economic context, because the military significance is only half the story. Before this campaign began, Russia's refining sector was one of the most robust in the world. Geographically spread, heavily invested, a key source of both domestic fuel and export revenue. Western sanctions had failed to shut it down. Nothing in the first 2 years of the war had meaningfully degraded it. Then Ukraine started hitting refineries. And it did not stop. Russia's domestic fuel market has now fallen into crisis. Gasoline prices are rising at the fastest rate in 2 decades. More than 50 Russian regions have implemented mandatory fuel rationing. The government has banned most exports of gasoline and jet fuel. Moscow has been forced to approach Kazakhstan, a neighboring state, requesting emergency supply of 50,000 tons of gasoline because Russia cannot produce enough for its own population. Let that sink in. Russia, one of the world's largest oil producers, is importing emergency gasoline from Kazakhstan. That is a country that built its global influence on oil revenues. That told its citizens for years the economy was stronger than ever. That country is now buying emergency fuel from a smaller neighbor because it cannot repair its own refineries fast enough to meet domestic demand. And this is where things stand after just months of a campaign that has not yet reached its peak. And now, the last major refinery that had never been touched is on fire. The geographic scale of what Ukraine achieved in a single night deserves specific attention. Omsk is not just far from Ukraine. It is closer to Mongolia than it is to the Ukrainian border. It is in a part of Russia where the war was supposed to be invisible, where ordinary citizens could go about their lives without seeing any consequence of the decision their government made in February 2022. That invisibility is now gone. The smoke over Omsk's industrial district on the morning of July 7th was visible to satellite cameras. It was visible to residents looking out their windows. Russia has no more safe zones. Experts cited by AP and Reuters warn that rebuilding damaged refinery facilities will be slow and costly, potentially prolonging shortages well into late 2026. Specialized equipment is often sourced from abroad. Under sanctions, obtaining replacements takes months or years, not weeks. Now connect this to the front, because the fuel crisis is no longer only a civilian problem. Leaked internal communications from Russian military channels confirm what Ukrainian frontline units have been reporting. Armored vehicles have disappeared from several sectors. Generators are failing because units have run out of fuel to run them. When the generator fails, the drone loses power. When the drone loses power, the unit loses its eyes. When the unit loses its eyes, it becomes vulnerable to exactly the kind of strike Ukraine is conducting. A Russian military blogger reporting from the front described conditions in stark terms. Soldiers in one division are going days without food deliveries. Logistical failures are so severe that some troops are deliberately eating less, weakening themselves intentionally, hoping to be classified as unfit and pulled back from the front line. A frontline officer summarized the situation directly. The army is not facing a single problem, but a comprehensive decay across multiple layers simultaneously. Logistics, fuel, drones, electronic warfare, personnel, discipline, morale. He added, "The front is holding, but not because of the system, despite it." Meanwhile, Russia responded to Ukraine's energy campaign not with restraint, but with a mass missile and drone attack on Kyiv. The second major assault on the Ukrainian capital in just 4 days. At least 19 people were killed. Weapons used included Zircon hypersonic missiles, originally designed to sink ships, fired at apartment buildings, Iskander ballistic missiles, Kalibr cruise missiles, and 351 one-way attack drones. Ukraine intercepted 31 of 33 Kh-101 cruise missiles, all 6 caliber, and 326 of 351 drones. The Zircon and Iskander missiles were not intercepted, and revealing a continuing gap in Ukrainian air defense against ballistic and hypersonic threats that Russia has continued to exploit. Between July 1st and 5th alone, before the Omsk strike, Ukraine's unmanned systems forces struck 37 energy nodes across occupied Crimea and Russian-occupied territories in southern Ukraine. That is an average of more than 7 per day. The campaign is not slowing, it is accelerating. And all of this is happening while Russia is simultaneously trying to conceal the scale of its economic collapse. Rosstat stopped publishing weekly fuel price data. Russian state media describes gasoline queues as technical logistics problems rather than the consequence of a coordinated Ukrainian destruction campaign. But the satellites show the queues, the drone footage shows the empty stations, and the smoke column over Omsk is visible from every window in the city. Here is what should stay with you about July 6, 2026. Russia built its refining sector over decades. It was designed to be resilient, spread across 12 time zones, insulated by geography from any conceivable conventional military threat. The assumption was that no adversary could reach it. That assumption held for 2 years of war. It does not hold anymore. And consider what it means that Russia is responding to this campaign by firing Zircon missiles, weapons worth $8 million each, at apartment buildings in Kyiv. Zircon was designed to destroy aircraft carriers. Russia is now using it against residential neighborhoods because it is one of the few systems Ukraine cannot intercept. That is not a sign of strength. That is a military running out of proportionate options and reaching for the most expensive tool it has left, against targets that do not justify the cost. That is not a military campaign anymore. That is a structural dismantling of Russia's ability to produce the fuel that powers its economy, its logistics, and its war. 11 refineries. One night, 2,700 kilometers, 11 down.